I admire Neo The World Ends With You for its youthful attitude through eccentric personalities and character designs, and its so cheesy it's good vibe. It brings back how I felt all those years ago with its predecessor, but that's also because, while a sequel that can be enjoyed on its own, its adherence to the original story of The World Ends With You brought me back to another time, which might leave you lost if it passed you by. Still, NEO TWEWY has its share of attractions, like a standout action RPG combat system that evolves into an exciting rush of flashy spells filling up the screen. And while you might roll your eyes at the cast of characters' quirks in the beginning, they'll grow on you like good friends who are annoying at first. The same can be said about its soundtrack. Songs that are odd upon first listen become bops that get stuck in your head. This is also a story-heavy RPG with intriguing twists and turns. However, in its shallow, riddle-filled objectives and narrative wheel spinning, NEO TWEWY drags its feet for a bit too long and too often before reaching its payoff.
Gotta focus.
Now the setup is that the Reaper's game is back, a parallel dimension of real-world Japan. Characters trapped in it have been posthumously invited to play a game of ambiguous rules and objectives for another chance at life. But rules are meant to be broken, and parameters are meant to be manipulated, so much so that you eventually disregard its logic and just embrace the cool nonsense used to bend the fate of the characters and the setting of Shibuya itself. Main protagonist Rindo and his friends Fret and Nagi, all teenagers who consistently rack their brains to overcome the Reaper's game's seemingly impossible odds, they drive the desperate fight for survival. And supporting characters, whether they're friend or foe, make the core ensemble all the more stronger. While Rindo is your avatar and the level-headed empath, most of the supporting characters fill in archetypes with confidence and their own personable touch, which is also a testament to the great performances by the voice cast.
We've got this in the bag. Time to take out the trash! Hey, not bad! Just doing my job!
Characters are at the heart of NEO TWEWY, from their striking fashion sense to their overstated idiosyncrasies. It's how you come to understand them, and they are what makes this game memorable. There are some notable misses and unlikable characters, but the wide cast and the freedom of expression NEO TWEWY affords these personalities make it easy to find who you identify with, and it's one of the strongest hooks here. I definitely can't get into spoilers, but those who love the original TWEWY, including myself, are treated to some hype moments through important story connections and sweet callbacks. A few aspects of this do come across as ham-fisted, but I also can't deny the jolt of nostalgia that made the experience all the more enjoyable. Ultimately, that leaves those who never engaged with the original TWEWY out of the loop. NEO TWEWY tries to accommodate by throwing in vague references to what happened in the first game, so NEO TWEWY will hit differently for different folks. As for the storytelling, NEO TWEWY takes a long time to get the ball rolling, and sometimes drags its feet even when things start to really heat up. It's not that the exposition is bad, it's actually where a ton of the charm comes from, letting characters express themselves and imprint their mannerisms in your mind. It's just that there's so much of it, and it often feels like filler and dialogue for the sake of dialogue. There is a lot to work through, and not all of it is particularly fascinating. It hurts its momentum by dragging you through wild goose chases, funneling you from point to point for a chunk of dialogue to move the story just a step forward, and you're frequently asked to solve riddles or investigate an anomaly, which can sometimes be an interesting brain exercise, but these moments frequently feel like busy work rather than actually engaging with the game's world. NEO TWEWY is backloaded with some of its best moments, but runs the risk of losing your interest before it really gets spicy or starts to pay off. It's also worth noting that most of the game's story is told through character portraits and panels.
Perhaps. Exactly.
The game's wonderful art style complements the approach, but the over-reliance on character stills takes away from feeling present in a bustling city like Shibuya and that things are actually happening in those streets. It's a shame too because Shibuya is vibrant and the game's few cutscenes are stunning. Unfortunately, in several story-critical moments, you have to use quite a bit of your imagination to visualize what's happening instead of actually seeing it unfold. Combat picks up some of that slack though. The chaos of the action-packed battles is a visual treat, especially as things ramp up when extra party members join the fight, and thankfully, it's a blast to play too.
You're done for! So far, so good. Let's keep it going!
The foundation of combat are pins, which are equipable spells and attacks that get mapped to a specific button for a certain character depending on the attack type. You have melee, range, charge, damage over time, and area of effect abilities, all of which can be fired off simultaneously or strategically used to string together combos with good timing. Doing so is rewarded in boosting your groove meter, which then lets you cast a powerful super-like ability to further pound your enemies. You're constantly earning new pins throughout the game, giving you new ways to engage in combat and rethink what's most effective for your party. Once you start building up a collection of pins, devising effective combos, and reading the patterns of the various enemy types, NEO TWEWY's gameplay really shines. It becomes absolute chaos when you start stacking and juggling multiple attacks, yet remains fast-paced and satisfying. What's more is that combat difficulty can be fine-tuned at any moment in your journey. NEO TWEWY features the basic easy, normal, and hard, or extra hard if you unlock it, but also lets you slide the party's level down in increments to further tweak the way you're challenged. It's also a means for adjusting how you earn rewards like new pins and experience points. In the overworld, you can choose when you engage with enemies, and you can stack encounters before initiating them. You could also just worry about the battles necessary to advance the story if you want. NEO TWEWY is designed to accommodate various playstyles in creative ways. Shibuya as your overworld is one of the joys of NEO TWEWY as well. Shopping for new gear and ordering food to boost your stats in the different districts is a nice way to connect to the city and build up your party. Side quests, while fairly basic in design, represent the lives of the people who fill the streets. These help you unlock some in-game perks, and a few of these have neat little stories to boot. Lastly, one of the most significant pieces in creating the distinct atmosphere is the oddball yet lovable soundtrack. With a complete disregard for consistent music genre, you'll hear grungy punk or full-on hardcore tunes 1 minute, then some catchy J-pop and J-rock style bops before going into up-tempo synthwave. And overall, it's so good. Music was paramount to the first game's identity, and NEO TWEWY brings the heat again. It's a big way the game doubles down on its attitude, and you can't help but admire that. Despite my gripes with the ways NEO TWEWY almost stunts my enthusiasm for it, I'm glad it exists. I can live with the lulls along the way for its memorable moments, and I can still wish it did more with storytelling while loving its personalities, sense of style, and connections to the original. It's largely made for those with a fondness for the first game, which becomes increasingly apparent as the story goes on, so your mileage may vary. But the world of TWEWY is a unique one that offers a chance to feel young, wild, and free. And it's packaged as a frenetic RPG that can be cheesy as hell in both its serious and lighthearted moments. But after embracing that, it's a journey worth considering.